Hello, welcome to Race Club. I want to thank the organizers for inviting me, and especially Mariam, who's been really warm and welcoming for these last 2 days, and I'm really having a lot of fun here in Moscow, and I hope that you guys are all going to be excited about the future of Ruby and the future of Rails. And my name is Claudio, and I'm a member of the Rails issues team. So if you ever open a pull request or an issue on Rails on GitHub, that I might reply to you and close your documentation, fixes and issues. And today I'm going to talk about what's going to happen with Rails 5. So let's get it started. If you want to follow, there's no code in this presentation, but there are some links to the pull request. So if you want to follow, these slides are at that URL, and the links are there too. Okay, so Rails 5 is the next major release of Rails, and the way in which I think about this, it's when you move out of a place to a new place, because you have to decide what you want to take with you, and you're going to leave some things behind. You don't want to bring everything, and it's also kind of a hustle because you actually have to move to the new place, and that's not always pleasant, but then you know that at the end that's for good. And so this is what's going to happen with Rails 5 too. And to give you some sort of context about this, I just want to take a step back, because this is, of course, not the first time this happened with Rails. So I'm just going to trace back to a little of history of Rails, so we get a little of context. So I go way back, and I introduce you to Rails 0. This is in my mind how Rails was before it even existed, living with her parents that I called Perl and PHP, because that was kind of where it came from. But of course, she was really angry and wanted to get away and live her own life. And so all she had was her small room, and she wanted to just be different and escape from Perlish PHP. So they had all this initial teenage angst, until the first release was Rails 1. And Rails 1 is basically like when you move to college. So you have your college dorm that is not big and is not clean. It's probably small and messy, but doesn't matter, because what mattered there was to be free, to finally be able to say, okay, this is the code that I want to write. I'm going to use Ruby. Finally, I'm going to do things the way I want. So at that time, it was still possible to change a lot of things in Rails very fastly, and just to be able to say, this is where I am, and this is what I want to do. Rails 2 was the next release, and then I imagine this as when you actually move to your first real apartment, because still there was not a lot of baggage, so there were still a lot of changes going on. And some things, it might still take some time to make them perfectly working, but it was that moment when Rails was starting to become popular or cool, and so it was kind of the way of saying, I'm here, I want to have friends with me and just play around with all I have. And there were not many businesses running on Rails, so it was still popular to make sort of fast and big changes from one release to the next. Then Rails 3, what happened is that Rails met MERB. This is only my imagination, but if you know what happened with Rails 3 is that two projects merged together, Rails and MERB, which was another Ruby framework. And so this is kind of what happens when you move in with somebody else, that you have to decide what you want to take that's yours, and then you have to adapt to the habit of the other person. And so it's not very easy. In fact, it took some other minor versions, Rails 3.1, Rails 3.2, to make it a really good merge. And also, what happens when you do this is that people are going to start talk. You know, your parents are going to say, are you sure you want to move in with this person? So it was the first time when there were people criticizing the direction that Rails was taking. But, you know, in the end, I think it was a good decision. And finally, we are at Rails 4, which is the current version. And what happened in this time is that because more businesses have started using Rails and more people have a job thanks to Rails, you know, you can't really make too many changes at once and ask people to, you know, change the whole code base. And so Rails now is not anymore that cool new framework that people look at just to say, oh, I want to experiment. And especially maybe newcomers, they are attracted by other frameworks because it's more mature. And, you know, some people say, well, Rails is now, you know, for business, and it has a racing car parked in the garage, and it's like this sort of things that sometimes people like to hate online, saying, you know, why does it have all these features, and, you know, it's not really what I need anymore. So there has been a little of separation, and some people might have left Rails for other frameworks. And so we come to Rails 5. And the way in which I see Rails 5 is, in my opinion, is the best release that Rails is going to have. Because it's learning from all this experience, and it's not just going to try to go back and destroy everything and just start from scratch and pretend to be the new framework on the block. Instead, it's going to learn from this experience and also reconcile you know, with people who have left, because it's going to be more welcoming, especially to newcomers. Because if I look at all the pull requests that have already been merged into master, I see a lot of work being done to make Rails even easier to use for people who are new to web development and more easy to understand. And so that was kind of my sort of introduction to Rails, how we got here today. And so let's see actually what Rails 5 is about. And so I want to go back to, you know, what I was explaining about moving to a new place. I looked at the pull requests that right now are already part of Rails 5, which doesn't exist yet. It's still in alpha on GitHub, but you can look by looking at the code on GitHub. And I see that these changes take different directions. Some of them are meant to clean up the existing code, which is kind of what you do when you have to move to a new place. You want to you know, make sure you don't bring too much stuff. And then other things are meant to make a better environment for where you're going. So I have, I'm going to start with some of these pull requests. This is what I call the cleaning part. So imagine that, you know, and you start opening your closets and your drawers, and you find things that are broken. So you don't want to take those things with you. Or maybe you find things that are old, that you haven't really used in a long time, and that's something else that you want to throw away before you get to this new place. All the numbers that you see there, those are the number of the pull request. So if you want to then check the code on GitHub, they're there. The first one, I really like that one. It's just a pull request that removes 1,000 lines of code from Rails, of deprecated code. And I think that's really important. If you have ever worked on a big app or legacy code like this, you might know how easy it is to add code to your app but it's always hard to go back and look and just remove code, and it's important to do it. So that's just removing code. An example, for instance, is that if you send emails with Rails, and if your emails have links, you can use the routes helpers, for instance, comment_path if you want a link to a comment. The problem is that if you use _path, that's a relative URL, so your users are not going to be able to see those links. You have to use _URL. So those _path methods, for instance, have been removed. That's just one example. Another thing that's been removed, respond to respond with, they have already been moved to a gem called responders. So all the placeholder methods that were in Rails have been removed. If you still need those, you can include the gem. Another thing that's been removed is XML serialization. So serializing data in XML now is not as popular as 10 years ago. People use JSON or YAML. So if you still need to do that, you can. This also has been moved to a gem, but by default, Rails is not going to ship with this. Other methods, content tag 4 and div 4, you could use those in your views to wrap your HTML in, the div HTML tag. And you don't really need those because there is another helper called content tag that's more generic, and so these have also been moved into a separate gem. Skip action callback, it's something that you can use in your controllers to say, I want to skip this callback, and I don't care if it's a before callback, after callback, and around callback, it's just going to skip it. And it's a little confusing because if you have, for instance, a before callback, you can actually use the specific skip before callback. And the same with the other ones. You don't really need this generic skip all callbacks with that name. Something else, there were some rake tasks in Rails, rake doc guides, rake doc app, rake doc Rails. They allow you to generate documentation for Rails for your app. People were not really using those a lot. Normally the documentation is on a README, on a wiki, on a website. So these are also gone. Render nothing true. This is something that you can use in your controllers if you have an action that has to respond without any body. So for instance, a user submits a form, and all you want to say is, okay, status 200, but you don't need to send any body. To do that, there is already a method called head. So you just say head and the status code, for instance, head okay. And so you don't need this render nothing true. You just use the head method. And finally, still in our controllers, when you write callbacks, you can say before filter or before action. They're exactly the same. And so with Rails 5, you should use the action one because it makes more sense. You want to execute your callbacks before an action. So these are all methods that have been removed, deprecated, moved to a gem, and it's this sort of preparation to make room for more things. This is the next step, the one that I call pack, which is when you're actually making the boxes and to bring things to your new place. So it might happen then when you move, you find objects that are not broken, but they're just old. For instance, you have an old fridge or an old washing machine. Sure, you could bring those to your new apartment, but for how long are they going to work? Aren't you better off with a new one? So in this case, it's not like Ruby 2.0 or Ruby 2.1 don't work anymore. But there is a new version, Ruby 2.2, that has more features and it's faster. So Rails 5 decides to go with the most recent version of Ruby. So Ruby 2.2.2 is going to be required by default. I think this is really good because, first of all, it's faster, and then it has a lot of improvements in the way in which strings or symbols are managed, or garbage collection, that also allow people to make Rails faster. As a matter of fact, there have already been several pull requests that all they do is just they make Rails faster, and those are the best pull requests. They don't change anything. They just say, oh, I realized that if I use strings in this specific way, then there's going to be less memory used and code is going to get faster. So I think this is great, and this can already be one of the reasons why you want to upgrade to Rails 5. Also, Ruby 2 comes with some new syntaxes that have already been used by Rails. For instance, you can have keyword arguments, and that can make your methods more readable. Or finally, we can get rid of alias method chain. That was a method of Rails that now it's not needed anymore because Ruby provides module prepend, which can be used instead of having this specific method in Rails. Okay, so far so good. Cool, so we have packed everything and now we're ready to move to the new place. And the actual phase of moving, it's always not that fun, putting everything on a track. And I think that's sometimes what happens when you actually have to upgrade your app, for instance, from Rails 3 to Rails 4, from Rails 4 to Rails 5. That specific day might not be a fun day, but I want you to be aware of all the good things that are going to come. So don't just be hating Rails too much that day, because it's kind of a necessary step to get better. All right, so we are now in the new place, and now we are unpacking and opening the boxes. And what happens when you open the boxes is that you find small things that you have to fix. For instance, you have to fix the light bulb in a lamp, or fix the leg of your table. And so this is kind of what Rails also is doing, is fixing a lot of small things. And there are many of them, and once again, Rails 5 is not out yet, so there might be even more. But I think this is also really cool, especially for newcomers. Because maybe if you've worked with Rails for a long time, you know that you have to write code in a specific way because you know that's how Rails behaves, even if it's not like logical. But we want to make things better for everybody. So let me just go through some of these. The first one, that you type Rails new name to create a repo, but then you type rake db migrate, and then you're like, wait, is it Rails generate or rake generate? It's always confusing. You don't know which one to use sometimes. Well, you are gonna use Rails all the time. So this is the idea that you can just use Rails generate, Rails db migrate all the time. And it's not just good for that, is also some of these commands are going to be improved. For instance, Rails test is going to run your test, but you're also going to be able to specify which line, the number of the line to test, or to repeat failing test, or to have documentation option in different format. The second one is probably the reason why you should definitely move to Rails 5. The name of the files, of your partials, they had to be valid Ruby identifier, for instance, underscore comment.html.urb. Well, they don't have anymore, so if you want to name your partial files underscore any emoji.html.urb, you can do that. If you have a partial like that, then you can name all your files emoji. I think that's really cool. Yeah. Okay. What's next? Okay. So if you use belongs to, for instance, a comment belongs to a post, that means that a comment has a post ID, and in Rails 5, that's going to be required by default. The post ID cannot be nil. So if you're saying a comment belongs to a post, the post must exist. This is going to be required by default, so you cannot just have a comment that doesn't have a post, and then when the user sees it in the browser, there's going to be a runtime error. This is going to be enforced at the very beginning. So this is another of those things that's very beneficial for beginners, because they say belongs to, I expect things to exist. Let me see if this is working here. Okay, so this unique method, let me explain what this is. In Active Record, there is a method called unique that you can use to retrieve from the database unique objects. For instance, you can do comment.unique, and that goes to the database and runs a query that's select distinct star from comments. Then Ruby itself has also a method called unique on enumerables. So if you have an array, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then you do .unique, it's just going to give you the unique items. These are two different methods. They do different things. And so sometimes it's confusing because one goes to the database and the other loads everything in memory. The Active Record method has an alias. It's also called distinct, because that's the query that is run. So in Rails 5, that's what you should use. You should, if you want to go to the database and get distinct comments, you're going to do comment.distinct. So this is going to remove this confusion about having two methods with the same name. What it means is that still in Active Record, when you want to filter objects, for instance, comment where user ID 1, normally you use where. So whenever you want a subset, you do comment.where. And this is kind of what people expect, how to filter and get a subset of objects. There are some methods that don't follow this pattern. For instance, if you want to delete all the comment by user 1, you can do comment.delete all user ID 1. So you can pass the conditions to the delete all methods. This is, it's also not very uniform. Normally people expect the filters to be called with where. So this is what's going to happen in Rails 5. Delete all and destroy all are not going to accept any arguments anymore. So you have to do comment.where user ID 1 .delete all. And even the update method of Active Record in Rails 4 requires you to pass the ID of the object you want to update, and that's not going to be required in Rails 5 anymore. Let me see. I might not go through all of them because there are still more. Let me just take another couple ones. Well, for instance, this one, reversible migration. You know that if you have a migration that has create table and then you roll back, Rails is smart enough to know that the opposite of create table is drop table. So many of these actions are automatically reversible. Not all of them, but Rails 4 adds even more. For instance, add timestamp or change column default, so even more are going to be like this. So you can just use the change method instead of up and down. And then let me just go to this one. So I don't know if you've ever heard deep munge. I know some of you have. But if you haven't, you're probably lucky, because it's one of those things that was a little broken in Rails 4. So what happens is that if you pass an array, let's make an example. If you have a user submitting a form, and the user can select interest, so you have all these checkboxes. So you want to collect the interest of the user, and the user doesn't select any interest, then what you're going to get is an empty array. You want to just store the fact that the user doesn't have interest. For security reason, in Rails 4, this empty array was not passed to the database. Instead, it was just nil was just passed. So basically, nothing was stored in the database. And finally, this has been fixed. So in Rails 5, if you have this case of having to pass empty arrays in your active record, then it's going to work as expected. You don't have to hack around this. Okay, so far, so good. Cool. Okay, so now comes the fun part. That's when you have moved to a new place and you've unpacked everything, and it's time to decorate, which means you can go to IKEA or wherever you want to go and start adding new things to Rails. And once again, it's important to do all these steps before. You don't just want to add things on top of broken code. And so let's see what are the additions to Rails 5. Okay, the first one is, I think, the most requested feature ever on Rails. Yeah. All right. I think you're confirming that is the most requested feature. If you want to run an OR query, example, comment where user ID 1 or user ID 2, you couldn't do that in Rails 4 unless you were writing your own SQL or using Arrow, and now you can. So that's it. Okay, you can give it another applause if you want. Cool. I didn't write that, so it's not for me. Another addition. If you have an active model error, for instance, a user submits a form and the email is required and the email is missing, then your form is going to say email address cannot be blank. Now, if you want to recognize that error, you could use this message, the string cannot be blank, but there was no specific code or identifier for that type of error, the blank error. So now active model errors also have codes and details, so if you want to just more programmatically rescue errors in a different way, not just showing the message, then you can do that now. This is also cool. Integer now have positive question mark and negative question mark. So if you want to do 5.positive, 0.negative, you can do that. And what's cool about this pull request is that this pull request was opened and it was merged into Rails, and then somebody asked, shouldn't this be a part of Ruby itself? So a pull request was opened to Ruby, the language, and it was actually accepted there too. So if you use Ruby 2.2.3, you're going to have these methods in Ruby too. Otherwise, they're available in Rails 5. And date and date time, they get some new methods. If you want to know if a date is in the weekend, what's the previous or the next weekday. If you are debugging your code and you don't use pry or something like that, you want to see what is the source code of the method that I'm debugging right now. You can actually call .sourceCode, and it's just going to show you the source code of that method. So that can be useful if you are debugging a Rails app. This one, forever cache. If you have pages that you want the browsers to cache forever, so if you have just a static page, or maybe the privacy policy of your website, you want to send that to the user and then just say, cache it forever, it's not going to change, then to do that, you had to specify, expire 99 years, e-tag, all these things manually, and now in Action Controller you can just say forever cache. And you're gonna have to, you can write less code to do that. Has secure token. I think this is also a nice feature. Many times people have to generate tokens for the users. So not passwords that the users have to type, but a token, like a long random string that you give to the user, maybe to access an API. Now there is a method that does that for you. So you just put a secure token in your user model, for instance, and that's going to generate a token. The name is token. You can change the name, and it's a 40 characters string, and you don't have to think anymore. Should I use secure random, which SHA, digest, all these things. You can just use that, and it's going to be there for you. So I think that's also convenient. Action controller renderer. I think that's a little long to explain. Basically, you can render your views outside of your action controller loop. And yeah, maybe you want to look at this pull request because that's a little long. And then I'm just going to go to the last one. If you have an app that has cache, and you all should, then normally when you develop, you don't want the cache on because you're working on the code. But sometimes you want the cache on because that's actually what you want to test. So to turn the cache on while you're developing, you have to go and change your development.rb file, your environment, and turn it on, and then you have to turn it off again. There are new rake tasks that you can just do dev cache on and dev cache off, and it's just going to save you keystrokes. You can just do that, turn it on, and then you turn it off. Okay, so these all the changes that I presented so far, I think they're all really cool, and they can make for a great new environment where we've cleaned up things, we've fixed things, we have added new features, and now it's the time where you're actually gonna see if everything works. That's what I call the housewarming party, where you finally invite all your friends over and you show what you've done, and you want to say, hey, look, this is super cool, don't you guys all love it? And you expect everybody to just say, oh yes, Rails 5 is super cool. And guess what? Everybody's going to come and say, oh, this sucks. This is not what I was expecting. This is broken. This doesn't work with my gem. And you're just going to cry and cry. So the reason why that might happen is because there are some breaking changes in Rails 5. And of course, I've left them for the very end of the presentation. So these are changes that might affect your app, and you want to look into those if you have an app that you are upgrading from Rails 4 to Rails 5, or if you maintain a gem that you want to also work with Rails 5. And so there are not many. I listed 4 so far, and I'm going to talk you through this. And all of these have a very good reasons why they were made, but you want to pay special attention to this. The first one, I am personally responsible for that because I made that pull request, so you can hate me if you want. Okay, thanks. I don't know if that applause was because he hates me or he loves me. Okay, so let me explain you what this means. In Rails 4, if you have an active model or an active record callback, for example, a before save in your model, and that callback returns false, then your object is not going to be saved. Also, all the other callbacks are not going to be executed. So if any of your callbacks returns the value false, that's going to halt the whole callback chains. That's how it is in Rails 4, Rails 3, Rails 2. This is one of those things that, sometimes people say it's magic. in Rails because it's kind of very implicit. You're not really writing a callback saying, hey, I want this callback to actually affect everything else. Your callback sometimes might just return false because that's the last value of the last line of that method. And maybe that callback is in a superclass. So sometimes it's confusing. You know, your object is not saved, and you're like, why is that? And then you realize, oh, you know, maybe I'm assigning false. So it's one of those things that I think it's good to make more explicit. So in Rails 5, if one of your callbacks in active model or active record returns false, that is not gonna halt the callback chain. The false value is gonna be ignored with the effect of the chain. So you can have as many callbacks as you want. They are gonna do their work, like setting a field or whatever your callback is doing, but it's not gonna change the fact that your object is gonna be saved and the around callbacks and the after callbacks are all going to be executed. So as I said, the reason why is to make things more explicit. Do you actually want your code to stop everything else? You can still do that, but you have to throw abort, like the symbol. So if you type throw abort, that's going to do what returning false used to do, stopping everything from being executed. Otherwise, you know, returning false is not going to have that effect. The second one, action controller parameters. This is the params that you have in your controllers. That params used to just be a hash within different access. So you were able to call all the methods of hash, slice, delete, everything on that hash. In Rails 5, it's not going to inherit directly from hash within different access. You're still going to be able to call most of the methods. You can still call permit, require, square brackets, but not all of the methods, also for security reasons. So, in general, this should not affect your code, but if for some reason you are specifically expecting that params to be a full hash, then you might want to look into this pull request, because some methods are not going to work anymore. This one is not as bad. I listed it here because that happened to me as I was upgrading my app to Rails 5. If you have a query like comment.where type video comment. So let me step back. Imagine you have different types of comments. You have text comment, video comment, and you just want to retrieve one type. You could just write this query, comment.where type video comment, passing the actual class. So without making it a string, you could just pass the class to the query, and then active record would call toS and make that a string. In Rails 5, you cannot do this anymore. You actually have to pass the string. So you have to quote video comment or to call dot to s, because in the database it's a string. So that's what you have to do. It's not, once again, a big change, but if you were used to just pass the class, then you want to make sure you don't do that anymore. The last one, you might be aware that Rails is time zone aware for date and date time. So if you have a date in your code, when it's stored in the database, it's stored as UTC, and then when you take it back and show it to the user, it's going to be displayed with the time zone that you have configured. So this was already the case for date and for date time. In Rails 5, time columns are also going to be time zone aware. So in Rails 4, if you had the time, it would just be in the database as it was and, you know, be displayed as it was. But in Rails 5, even time attributes are going to be stored in the database as UTC and then displayed back in the time zone that you have. So if you use time fields in your apps, you might want to look into this. Okay, so I know some of this might sound scary, but I want to reassure you that Rails has a very important thing that's called deprecation policy. What this means is that if you have an app that is now running on Rails 4.2 and you upgrade your app to Rails 5.0 and you have any of these, your code is still going to work. Your code is not going to break. All you're going to see are deprecation warnings, because that's how upgrades work on Rails. You have a feature that is working in 4.2, you upgrade your app to Rails 5.0, your old behavior is still going to work as it was, but you're going to see all this deprecation warning. So if you are returning false in a callback, it's still going to work, but you're going to see deprecation warning. Returning false is not going to work anymore. It's 5.1. So the next release is going to be the one that actually is going to make these changes permanent. So once again, you don't have to be too scared. You can take your Rails 4.2 app today, you can upgrade it to Rails 5.0, and you're just going to see these deprecation warnings. And then you have time to actually make all these changes in your code base so that it's perfect for Rails 5.1. This deprecation policy is very important, because this is one of the basis of Rails. So even in the future, whenever there is a new Rails version release, this is always going to be the case. So you have basically the entire time of a release to fix your code. And we get to the end, and the last thing that I wrote is grow, which I think is what happens after you move to a place and after you have made an environment that's better for everyone. And what I mean with this is that I think that Rails 5 is making a great statement in trying to be back into the community and involving everyone. I've already explained how this can be the case for newcomers that are going to find code that's probably better for them, and even for skilled programmers that are going to see code that is more performant. Another of the new features that you might have heard of is Rails API. This was a separate project, a project that had its own repository in GitHub, a project that allowed you to build a Rails app, but kind of a mini app where you didn't have views, you didn't have sprockets, you didn't have all the front-end parts. You just had the back-end so that you could use that to build your own front-end in whatever framework you want, React, Angular, Ember, whatever you like. Rails API is now part of Rails. So if you use Rails 5, you can just do Rails new -- API, and that's just going to generate an app that is just the minimal backend that you need. And so I think this is also going to reconcile people that maybe have moved to a different frameworks to still come back to Rails for that component, because then you can still use active support, active record, all those things that are really powerful. And then still talking about sort of front-end heavy applications, ActionCable is also going to be part of Rails 5. I haven't included it in my presentation because as of today, it's still a separate repo on GitHub, so it's still being worked on. But the idea is that it's going to be completely working and fixed, and then it's going to actually be integrated inside Rails. And then, as for any other module of Rails, you can decide whether you want to use it or not. But it's also kind of looking forward to be able to generate apps that use WebSockets and are responsive or single-page apps. Same with Turbolinks. A new version of Turbolinks is going to be shipped with Rails 5, and even a new version of Sprockets is going to be released. So there are a lot of new features in all these other repositories that are gems that by default ship with Rails. And so, to conclude, I want to remark that I think all these steps that I've talked about are really exciting, because it really shows how Rails is not really looking back to say, I want to start from scratch and I want to get rid of everything at once. But instead, following this method of saying, well, we have to make room for the future by removing things that users don't use anymore, and then adding new features and try to make a room for a better community. And so if you are thinking about what do I have to do to update to Rails 5, or is it really worth it? I think it is. So I think if you have an app, you can start thinking about that. And if you have a gem that needs to be working on Rails 5, it's not going to be very hard to make it work. And I think, and I hope really that everybody's going to love Rails even more with this new release, because it's really looking forward. It has existed for 10 years, and with this spirit in mind, I hope it can live for the next 10, 20, or 30 years. And that's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Claudio. We have a little present for you.
So, what's the situation with action form? With that presenter layer, which could be put between the controllers and the form and the view helpers. Is there any hope of action form becoming official?
So the question is about action form, which is a project that changes the way in which forms interact with views and controllers. And there have been talks about making that. As of today, it's not, let's say, one of the required steps to release Rails 5. As I'm aware of, there's sort of a checklist of things that have to be ready before Rails 5 beta is released, and that is not one of them. So that's all I can say. It still exists as a repo, so you can use it and import it as a gem.
Yes, but you see, it has to be integrated, because the presenter layer is used heavily. It has to interact with the view helpers. So if we use Rails view helpers, we have them to be aware of the presenter.
Yeah, I understand your question, and all I can tell you is that as of today, there is no plan to wait for that to release Rails 5. So that's, I'm not discussing whether it's a good solution or not. That's all I can tell you.
Right, thanks. And the second one is about faster SAS compilation. So in new sprockets, are we going to use that C native SAS compilation or not?
So this is a question about SAS and sprockets. I think that's been worked on like right now, and because I'm seeing the pull request on sprockets right now, there's a lot of work on sprockets right now. So I don't have the answer of whether that's going to happen, but I think so, but I might be wrong. But you can look at the pull requests that are happening right now, because there are a lot of pull requests regarding what you're talking about, SAS comparing sprockets. And since a new major release of sprockets is also happening, that might be part of it. I invite you to just check in the GitHub repo. I think so.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Еще вопрос? В центре пятый ряд, ребят.
Hello. Could you please describe technology side of ActionCable? We use Node.js as a WebSocket server in our application. And what the capabilities of ActionCable right now? What the technologies relies on?
So right now, ActionCable is in alpha, meaning that the API and all the requirements has not been closed and completely fixed. So right now, it's are you talking about event machine and those dependencies? Well, right now you should probably look at the gem file of the project Rails ActionCable, and those are the current dependencies. You know, I cannot guarantee that those are going to be the ones that are going to ship to Rails because it's still being worked on. So, you know, to really know what dependencies are there now, you should probably go on GitHub, Rails ActionCable, and gem file, and those are the ones. I expect some of those to be the definite one, like for instance Redis. I expect that because, or you know, active job, like right now the code of ActionCable depends on those things a lot, so I don't expect those to change, but you can follow that. I mean, Redis really gives you all the pub/sub model that then ActionCable is really built on top. So.
For your presentation, you mentioned that we are going to move from Rails or from Rake do something to Rails do something. But one of the pull requests I thought was Rake cache dev.
Okay, I should have written Rails. It's just that pull request was made before the other one. Actually, the other one is green, so it's still open. So that's why I wrote that, because if you actually now go on Rails master, it's still Rake. The other pull request is still open. When the other one is going to be closed, then you can do Rails.
Okay, thank you. And when we can see better version of Rails 5? Maybe some.
Okay, so for the timeline, I mean, right now, indicatively, is by the end of this year. I don't have like the specific day, so I cannot talk about that. I think one of the important things is going to be for ActionCable to be stable enough so it can be included. You know, as I was saying, there's a checklist of features that kind of had to be in Rails 5, and most of them are there. Like, for instance, Rails API was one of them. So I can't now remember the whole list, but, you know, I remember ActionCable being one of them. And, you know, hopefully the beta version is going to be, you know, by the end of this year.
Hello, I have a question about merge of migration. For example, we have pre-migration. First migration creates a user model. Second migration adds a column, a name, and the third migration adds a column, for example, age. And after merge, we have only one migration. Could you tell something about it?
Is that something that is... Are you asking for the changes in Rails 5 regarding migrations?
Yes, yes.
Well, there is something that is still being worked on to change the migration API. So instead of being based on timestamps, having a different way to handle them. But because it's still, I think there is an open issue pull request on GitHub. So the things that are still up for discussion, I did include them here. And so you might want to look into that because, you know, it's not changed yet on Rails Master. So that might solve your problem, or if it's kind of a more specific problem, if you want, you know, we can look at your code together after this talk because it might be easier, you know, to understand. Okay.
Thank you.